Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon, like she's hitting me, to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by The Plain Truth. Wait for it. No? Hong Kong. Every other day.
I usually wait till you go through the whole lineup.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
my
then your
bad.
honk overtakes all our hellos.
Well, pretend we can edit that. Pretend we can edit it. I won't. I'm lying. But we are joined by The Plain Truth. Love it. Sleeping Warrior. How you doing?
Hola.
Ranty Flat Earth.
Hello.
And Arwin.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Good to have you all.
Nathan, have there
Yes.
been any concessions by any ballers over the use of the inaccurate use of absolute values instead of perspective?
Not to my knowledge, and this is required. This is necessary, as they have misled the public. So this is like a newspaper writing an article that's completely incorrect. Retractions are required when people state incorrect information, and in this instance we have an incorrect application of a perspective omitting proof of nothing believing calculator that says it proves there is a curve. It doesn't. It presupposes there is a curve and excludes perspective. So if we are to humour people and beg the question, assume an R value radius of Earth, and say that we are looking and confirming this value, then we must also include perspective in the calculations. Ultimately speaking, that has a massive problem. Currently, the one we're highlighting is the obstruction, the thing that causes things to be, in the calculator, quote, hidden. Well, nothing's being hidden unless there is something in the way, and that thing in the way is the bulge. And nobody is accounting for the fact that we have this bulge in the near foreground that has a much bigger angular size than the targets, which have reduced in angular size by comparison to the bulge because they're at distance. Now, nobody's accounting for any of this stuff. This is all perspective based, and not a soul, not a single globe head has ever accounted for this when they've drawn a line between target and observer in an orthographic view and then only calculated out the absolute sizes based on feet and inches when you don't see things in absolute sizes. It's completely fallacious. It's incorrect application of maths, and nobody's retracted a damn thing.
So what happened when we made a mistake? Did we make retractions?
Yeah, we have to retract things. We have to say, no, we can't see Ireland. I've seen a few videos saying they didn't eat enough humble pie. I haven't seen a video labelled humble pie. No, well, we've made plenty of retractions. I'm not going to direct you to the exact video where we've said, we can't see Ireland, we were wrong. But we absolutely asserted our mistake and corrected it and accepted it. You know, we had to eat humble pie, whether you like it or not, or can find the reference. I'm doing it now. If you want to take this as our official, we can't see Ireland 6 months after we discussed it, feel free. We were debating it. We were trying to come to conclusions about what we do see. That's why it was presented on a debating platform. Now, my excuses aside, we made a mistake and admitted to it. We have got a gross error by every single person who has ever applied the calculator ever, and not a single one of them has come forward. Meanwhile, we've had children sent to the debate. From their side, I'm now reliably informed that these children are frequenting Reg Rhetoric's hangouts. These are his boys that he's sending over. rather than retracting his nonsense, which we have called him out for, when he himself has used this calculation incorrectly. So don't send your boys. Get your ass on here and retract your nonsense and apply it correctly.
And do it promptly as well.
Yeah,
We
apply
also
it.
see
Apply
in the
perspective.
chat-
So we can laugh how badly it falls apart when you take into account a bulge in the near foreground that obscures everything. And we will say your model is wrong.
Yeah, we also see in the chat as well that they send the trolls in here. Whether they're coordinated or not, I don't know. But I think it is like a smear campaign to try and make it out that what we're presenting isn't the truth. For instance, we have Ron Burgundy in chat, who seems to think that these buildings that we're talking about are only, let's see, 30. What's his suggestion? 13.5 miles away. I can address that right now if you like, because he's not shut up about this for 2 days, and it's kind of, it needs addressing because people might believe this. So I'm just going to, if you just show me, tell me when I'm sharing, Nath.
Yeah, you're up.
Okay, so my last 2 videos that are titled 18.3 miles, okay, 18.3 miles, 18.3 miles, we are looking at the buildings of Barrow. Now, I'm just going to show you it on Google Earth, and then we can put this to bed, because essentially this guy is dishonest. Now, if he keeps saying stuff like this, sooner or later, somebody is going to be like, oh, what, Ranty's lying about his stuff, and he's going to go, yeah. Well, no, we're not. We're not Ron Burgundy. You are the dishonest one. So from these steps, which I've been evidencing in all my videos, I always show where I am, so there can be no doubt exactly where I'm taking these images from every single time. So I'm going to take you to Devonshire Dock Hall, right? And we're going to see if it's 13.5 miles, or we're going to see if it's 18.3 miles. Now you can tell me, what does it say on this ruler here? What does this say?
I see
18.35. Sorry?
I was just joking. I said that I see 13.
Yeah. He's dishonest. We've been focusing on these buildings. What he's trying to allude to is the lighthouse, which has appeared in my videos. I will give him that. And I have mentioned reference to the videos. But all the work that we have been doing, everything that we have been working towards, everything that we've been working with has been based in and around these buildings here, the tallest buildings in Barrow, 4th highest, Devonshire Dock, which are easily identifiable. So we've been working with these every single day. Now, he is dishonestly trying to tell people that this is only a 13.5 mile observation, which is incorrect. Right now, 18.35. So for 2 days, he's been telling people in chat. 2 days, people might be believing that. He's wrong. He's lying. He's a disinformation agent. All the work we're doing is at these distances.
I'm kind of in doubt that he even came up with that himself, because he doesn't have the brains to. He was probably told to by the crew, like, hey, you do this, you bring this forward. So he's just harping on it without actually understanding what the hell he's even talking about.
Well, from Devonshire Dock, I've just put a new line in now. So let's go 13.5 miles across the sea, and let's see where 13.5 miles ends. Right, there's 13.5 miles here, right? It doesn't even reach the coast. 13.5 miles is there, right? I am not filming in the sea. I show you my location in every single video. Every single video, it's complete. It's evidenced, and I do not like being told that I am misleading people with my evidence. So, Ron, you're just a troll. Everybody's seen you for what you are now, and you can get off my case.
Okay. You've worked hours and hours this morning, Ranty. At some point, I'm hoping you'll show us some of the stuff that you've done.
Yeah, we will do. We'll get to that in a moment. I just need to take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath and get Ron Burgundy out of your system.
Yeah,
Ranty,
I know.
I'm absolutely not worried about the integrity of your work. You've provided us with so much work. You're basically starting to create your own body of science here. So that's how I see it. And all this smear nonsense, it's just nonsense. And Ron Burgundy, come on. Guy can barely understand what the hell he's talking about anyway, so
I'd like
don't
to
worry
I'd like to
about it.
put a I'd like to put an order in for a coffee table book of your photography, Ranty.
You'd like to do what, sorry?
I said I'd like to put in an order for a coffee table book of all of your work.
Oh, right, okay. I better get started then. Yeah. I know you was asking about that yesterday, actually, perhaps putting it, documenting it, and we could perhaps do that, I suppose. What do you think, Nath?
I think show us what you've got. I'm really eager to see what you've got. I've
Right,
already seen it,
okay,
but I'm just, you know, I want to see it on. I've got my projector fired up. I've got it on the big screen. I'm just excited. I'm sorry.
Right, hold on. Right, well, should we start with some different... Shall I show today's video first, or should I wait? Oh, I'll show that in a minute. Let me know when I'm sharing, Nath.
Ready whenever you are.
Okay, well, so essentially I've been going up and down the coast, as you all know, looking across what should be a curvy, bendy water. What I'm seeing is not the case. What I'm seeing is flatness. And I've been evidencing it in all the last, I'd say, 2 months, I would say. And I think it all started with Anthony, with competition with Anthony. He saw the Isle of Man, the northern part of Isle of Man. It was compressed, but it was definitely the northern part of Isle of Man. So I kind of wanted to go and outdo him. So it sent me on a mission to go every day to film this location. And through that, I've been able to hopefully put some things together that might make sense as to what we're actually seeing. I've been working through it today and, you know, the last few days actually. So let's find the files. So where did it all started with this image, didn't it, Nath? I think the compression zone, when we started working out what was going on with the compressions of stuff.
Right, this is from yesterday, so check out yesterday if you want a more detailed explanation on this solitary image. But do you want to summarise this image, or do you want me to?
I can summarise it really quick.
Yeah, you go ahead.
The top part of the boat that isn't in the refraction zone or the dirty air is proportionately the same from a higher elevation as a lower elevation. But the lower elevation one, when you get into that circle of confusion, the crappy air, it gets compressed substantially.
Well,
Sometimes.
I just want to add
Depends
one
on
correction.
the
Sorry, Arwen.
circumstances.
Hold on. I just want to add one thing. So we'll get this terminology tied down now. So a very narrow viewing angle. So as you are decreasing in elevation, so the bottom image, as confusing as this sound, is from a higher elevation, about 30 feet, or exactly 30 feet. It was measured with a tape measure. But
not this one. This was 40 feet. This one.
Oh, my bad. 40 feet. Sorry.
Point.
Either way, so the bottom one is 40 feet in elevation. The top one is from about 1 foot or 2 foot in elevation, basically just on the water. And that decreases the viewing angle to the bottom section. But the top section, you still have a reasonable viewing angle of it. So the bottom section, which is in that decreased viewing angle, not dirty air, because there's no splash. We've got a mill pond between us and this boat. But you can see all of the lettering, but it's condensed, it's squashed. Anyway, sorry, you carry on, Ranty, I'm sorry.
No worries. What we did evidence in yesterday's video, when I went back, we saw the same boat. So essentially, I've just put that boat at the top. You can see it's from part of the video because it's got the little arrow there that I wasn't able to get rid of. But on this particular image, we see a much more defined orange underneath the stena line, which is evidenced in this one, but not as clear as this one. It was much richer on this day to get the orange, proving that we're seeing down to the bow. Now, this boat was in the same vicinity as when I took it this time. They did do the same route. I did actually get the distances out for it.
Ranty, if it's okay, do you mind if I just make a point about this picture you've got on screen right now?
Sure.
If the ballers, particularly Sean Hufford and Daz the cameraman and Red's Rhetoric and Geo Streamer, if they were to apply the before and after pictures of this boat, they would literally use the blink test, and they would line it up with the top of the mast, and they would blink over and it would like flick between the two pitches. And the conclusion they would come to would be that this is being obstructed by the curvature of the Earth. Regardless of whether it's in the right place or not, they'll claim any obstruction is curve. But because the letters are on the screen with Stenoline on them, it shows that it's being squashed. It's not being cut. And that squashing needs to be explained because there's no science for that on the ball Earth model that I'm aware of. And if there is, let's hear it. But on a flat plane, it's because things are getting compressed into the horizon. But just be aware that the ballers would blink test this and claim curvature, but for the letters that are on the side of the boat, that proves that it's not curved that we're seeing. It's not obstruction. It's not cut off. It's just being squashed.
Okay, so just to get Ranty back onto track, so we've got two images, one at the top, which is at the same view, same elevation, same everything, but on a different day, and then the one underneath it is what was compared yesterday, just to get Ranty back onto track.
Yeah, so the top two, same elevation, 2 separate days. This one was just the one elevation from much higher, but showing the boat in its entirety. The fact that I put this one in is just because of the orange bow that's clearly visible in this one that I've put in, because there is no orange. Often you get mirroring. So if there had been an orange stripe running above Stenoline, you could argue that this was some kind of mirroring effect. The fact that we're actually seeing it in the image and it's not, there's no other orange above the word Stenoline to be mirrored, it can only be one thing, and that is the bow of the boat. So it just shows that we are seeing all of the boat, and it's completely seen all of it. If you believe the curve calculator, which I know you hate me talking about this, but the curve calculators would say that at this distance you should barely see the very top of the S. All the wording would be gone, essentially. All of the wording would be gone. So the fact that we're seeing them in its entirety and down to the bow with the orange proves that we're seeing compression rather than a curvature of the Earth.
Okay, so as Ranty moves on, this is down to a reduction in the viewing angle. So because when he's at 40 feet, he's got a wider viewing angle on the low part of the boat, therefore it causes less compression, because I'm absolutely certain that in all of those images you have the effects of compression. It's all at distance 7 miles plus. So you carry on, Ranty.
Okay, so yesterday we also got a view from further away, actually. This was it 9.3 miles, I believe it was.
9.2 miles.
9.2. Right, 9.2 miles away to this boat at the top. Now, this is an image that I took off Google. I was able to find a comparable side-on view with the front face of the boat. It's the same boat. It's it's a sea truck one, and it's a sea truck panorama. Now, what we're seeing again in this is a very similar thing. We're seeing at the very top of the boat, anything above the orange, is proportionately the same. However, because it's slightly further away, it's actually meeting that compression zone, and everything below that seems to be being squashed, including the lettering. The lettering again is completely squished. Now you can see difference in height, apparent height, even though the width is the same. So I've lined it up widthways, so the width is the same. I've got the same angle. So essentially it should be the same height, but it's not. It's not the same height at all. It's half the size. And that's only down to the compression. You can see that with the two images. Same boat, one's compressed down, not widthways, but down. One's in its entirety and one's squashed. So as you can see, same thing happening again with this boat. So we've figured out, well, we seem to be figuring out what's going on. Now, this is an orthographic view, obviously, of what we're trying to explain. So if this is me with my camera and I've got the elevation set to, let's say, 6 feet. So I'm looking out in a direct straight line, looking straight out. And what we're seeing is things in the foreground are bigger. The further away it goes, it gets smaller. So we're looking at it perspectively. It's getting smaller, it's getting smaller, it's getting smaller. Now, this tight angle, this narrow viewing angle where we're getting the compression, and we have a wide viewing angle. So anything that's under 6 feet will be in the narrow viewing angle, and everything that's in the wide viewing angle could be essentially as much as a mountain for all we care about. As long as you're looking straight ahead, the lower part of the camera will only be focusing on a very narrow viewing angle. So all that information has to get squashed. So the further away that the tower goes, the smaller it gets, but it also brings part of the tower into that narrow viewing angle. As you've seen what happens with a narrow viewing angle, it seems to compress. So the bottom part of the tower is being compressed. It's dragging it down. It's dragging it down, and eventually it ends up where it's all sitting in the narrow viewing angle because of its angular size change at distance and the fact that it's trying to capture all that imagery in a very, very narrow view.
This is the point that what's his name? What's his Hillel Finder had the other day. When I made the same point, he said you can't do that. That's not orthographic, and that is the exact point we're making. We are looking side on because that's the way that you guys do it, but you have to reduce the target over distance, and that doesn't make it orthographic.
Sorry, it's not orthographic. This is just a cartoon to represent our point. It's not labelled orthographic at all. Orthographic would mean. Let me just get it in, please. So if this was classed as an orthographic view, everything would be scaled the same because we're looking side onto it, and all of these towers would be proportionate. So if you want to say it's anything, you could say we've got a side view of an observation being made, and then we're representing the angular size based on its distance with these towers decreasing. So you've got to give quite a convoluted explanation to what this is. It's just a drawing to make our point. So you can see it in side view, but this isn't orthographic. If it was orthographic, and kudos if you want to Ben Delisle or whatever that troll was called, because he basically had his CAD drawing inside profile with all these different telegraph poles, and they're all obviously the same size in the drawing. And he's like, well, what do you mean? Do you want me to reduce these in size because I'm physically reducing the size of them? And obviously, no, in orthographic, they would all be the same size. But just to make the point of what we're about to move on to, so Ranty's about to move on to something else. Yes, he's labelled it incorrectly as orthographic. It's just a cartoon. You know, who cares? It's just making his point visually, so when he starts showing you photographs, you understand with something familiar, i.e. a side elevation, what is about to happen when we show you in perspective view. So Ranty's about to move on to something very cool. Very, very, very cool.
Do you want the comparisons?
Yeah, you know where we're going. We've spent 4 or 5 hours on this morning.
Okay, so we have some numbers to the side. Obviously, the first number is the distance to the target, and the at 60 feet is the elevation that I took the image from. So the top image, let me show you on the Google Earth. So as we're looking across from this direction at these buildings, across into Barrow, we have some different staging points kind of thing. So we're moving further and further away. So this was the first observation point up here, nearer towards Fleetwood. And then we're working all the way back down past the pleasure beach, past the lifeboat station to the sand dunes here. So we're working down the coast. We're getting further away, further away. Every observation is further away. So the top one was the nearest one, 17 miles at 60 feet. Then we've got 18 miles at 1 foot, which was my 1 foot observation that we've shown a fair few times. 18.3 miles at 1 foot, 20.4 miles, 22 miles, 24.5 miles, all at 2 feet. This 22-mile observation was done by me today. The 24.5 mile observation was done, I believe, about 3 weeks ago. I did actually mention it on the show at some point, so if you want to try and dig that out, it's definitely there. But basically, Barrow in Furness was a sliver on the horizon. Now, this reminded me of Anthony's Isle of Man, where the Isle of Man was clearly compressed. The northern part of the Isle of Man was compressed. It was definitely land, but you could barely make out any features, so to speak. The only redeeming features with this observation, which was very evident in the video, was these two gaps here. These two gaps down between this building, and they are consistent all the way up with all the different observations. There's this kind of what appears to be a gap. So the fact that it was visible here just showed to me absolutely that this is the buildings that we were looking at. We do have part of the tower that's essentially starting to, it was a tough observation, but we got it. all the towers up the side. But what we're seeing, width-ways, is consistent. Width is all the same. It all works out perfectly. The towers always sit the same distance, essentially, above the buildings because they're out of the compression zone.
Ranty.
And lastly, if you look at the compression of it, look at the compressions. They're being squished. Now, we know for a fact with the 20.4 mile observation yesterday, we were able to replicate this as a form of compression as opposed to curvature of the Earth. Now, the curvature calcs say that all this, everything apart from obviously the top image, right, that would be seen. But everything else, all these other images, every single one of them, we should not have seen these on the curvature calcs. They should not be there. None of these observations should have been taken because they shouldn't be there. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, so just to round out before Anthony gets his question in, so the top image, you can probably see it labelled 17 miles. It's the closest observation, and it's from the highest altitude, so 60 feet. So essentially, you've got a proper viewing angle on all this stuff. You know, the buildings are approximately 100 plus feet, so you've got a viewing angle, you're about square with them, and you can see top and bottom in the frame of the camera. So they're all nice and clear. As you start to drop, and you reduce the viewing angle to the stuff at the bottom of the image, you start to see the distortion increasing as the distance increases and the compression increases. As the angular size reduces closer and closer to the horizon, it slips into that narrow angle and therefore becomes compressed. Whereas even down to the bottom one, you can see that the towers on the far left of frame are far less affected because they're taller. So even when the stuff is further away, they're still sitting outside of that tight viewing angle, causing them to be severely compressed. So the last thing to be compressed will be those towers, as they're the tallest thing. And you can see them as clear as day in the bottom image. If you can just circle them, Ranty, at the bottom. There you go. So, Anthony, you go ahead.
2 questions. The first one's rhetorical. You don't have to answer it, but why is the horizon in the same position on every single picture? Isn't the horizon meant to be the bulge? And that should vary with the distance. So from 18 miles up to 24 miles, the horizon being the bulge on the ball model would vary, right? Doesn't seem to be varying. It seems to be static. Well, the second question is, on the very low one at 24.5 miles, in the background, it looks like the mountain's also being compressed. It looks like the mountain is completely within the shot. Is that right?
I'm not too sure. It appears to me that just is probably, I don't know. It could just be part of the mountain that we just didn't capture it very well. I wouldn't say it was the mountain being compressed.
Okay, you'd have to get up to a significantly larger distance to push that mountain into this very narrow field, but it still happens. And what Jaren shows with the footage with the sunset going behind the mountains, he's saying, well, we always get asked, where's the beach? Where's the bottom bit? Well, even at that distance at 170 miles, you're going to have quite a substantial part of that mountain sat in this very narrow band. So obviously that's going to have the same effect. It's going to reduce down, it's going to squash down the bottom section by virtue of a very narrow angle to the bottom of the mountain. Therefore, you're missing a bottom of the mountain. Because if you imagine with the lowest picture, or the second two from bottom, or these two pictures, right, you've only got to have a tiny wave obscuring the midpoint to obscure all of those buildings in their entirety, because the angular size is reduced so much towards the horizon. Because we've got a mill pond on every single one of these pictures, you can see it all even when it's been compressed right down in that narrow field. If there was a tiny wave, though, obviously the further away you get, the more likely a tiny wave is to obscure these targets that have had an angular size reduction because of their distance.
The other question is, or the other point is, I've lost it. It'll come back to me.
I can tell you a couple of things. The 18.3 mile at 1 foot was at high tide. The 20.4 mile one was at high tide. The 18 miles at 1 foot was at low tide. So they're all at different tides as well. I mean, whether that is going to change what we're seeing, I don't know. What I do know is that high tide or low tide, we are seeing it.
That's what I was going to say.
Being cherry picked.
That's what I was going to say. The only explanation that the ballers, according to their model, would have for this explanation or this evidence is that Ranty must have had very unusual circumstances. We've heard Rumpus describing that before about the Isle of Man thing, And his words were, these are very unusual circumstances. And it sounds, plausible, I suppose. But he's got it 5 times on 5 different occasions at 5 different locations. And the horizon is in the same place. So looming is a variable based on the absolute atmospheric conditions at that time, and you would never get the same 2 conditions once. And now, why are we seeing the horizon in the same place on every single picture? It's clearly we're seeing it because it's there. It's not the case that it's being brought back from behind no curve.
Now, I would go further and say that this isn't just the only times that I've seen it. I've been down to the observation points now for the past probably 2.5 months. And I would say that for at least half of them, I've seen very clear images or reasonably clear images of Barrow. The rest of the time was crappy weather, or I was getting a lot of miraging effects. And yet these are probably the best observations that I was able to put together at different distances. Doesn't mean that this 18-mile one, for instance, I've replicated that, which would be a better observation, to the eye, more aesthetically pleasing than the 20.4-mile one. But obviously, I can only pick one per distance. So there are plenty of observations of this. It's not a fluke. This isn't random. This happens all the time. You can go there. You can see how flat this place is. Now, this is flat. It's not curve proof. This is flat proof, because all of these here, everything from 18 miles down, should not be seen on the curvature calcs if you believe that you live on a sphere. All of these must be loomed up. Every observation, every single one of these is to be loomed up for you to believe in the sphere Earth model.
Indeed.
Following on from yesterday's, which was this. So we had 2 observations from yesterday, one from a 30-foot observation, which would be the top image, and one from a 1-foot observation, which is the bottom image. Now, as you saw what I did yesterday, I simply just compressed the 30-foot observation by the curvature calc distance. So I think it was 245 feet hidden should have been on the lower image at 1 foot, and there should have been 125 feet hidden from the higher observation at 30 feet. So I reverse engineered the curve calcs and changed it into a percentage, giving me 49%. So I reduced the top image by 49% and compressed it without keeping its aspect ratio. I just compressed it by 49%, and look what happened. The top image and the bottom image are almost an identical match, just through compression and reverse engineering.
The question does become, what is causing this compression? Because on a sphere, there is no science for this. On a plane, the answer is obvious. It's because things are getting squashed, because you're looking at the same amount of real estate, but it's being squashed into less pixels because the angle of observation is getting less and less. It's getting smaller and smaller. The compression makes perfect sense if we live on a plane. But how would this be explained on a sphere? Because in no part of the refraction argument does it talk about the compression of the artifact continuously. It's like, yeah, we do see a bit of stretch and shrinking on what's it called, Skunk Bay footage, which is consistent with a ball, with a flat plane, not consistent with a ball. But what is the science for this on a ball? Because this is a phenomena. Things appear squashed on the horizon. What's the cause? Who knows? To me, it's because we live on a flat plane, and then you could manipulate your distance by changing your variables, like Ranty's done, and show that the squash is really a thing. I don't know.
Can I just get
so
Ranty
I
to...
have something to say as well.
You go ahead, Darwin. Go.
It's a great comparison. I like the multiple layer picture with all these different distances. But yeah, I'd like to basically remind you guys that it is not always compressing. It's not like a default compression scenario, because there's all kinds of things happening. Sometimes their compression is pretty regular, like with the boat shot you did recently, and compression is very much obvious, but there are all kinds of effects. So it's basically a distortion zone, and depending on the conditions, and the distance as well, because the distance aggravates it. The distortion types are different, but there's a very regular thing about it, and that is that it is indeed within a specific angle, and depending on the distance, there more of the object gets into that angle. But at the same time, there's still the obstruction from things in front of it, and it also becomes greater the greater the distance is, and the lower the viewer angle. So it is not just the effects are not just compacting. It is sometimes compacting and sometimes it's stretching. So I call it a distortion zone. And sometimes things are compacting and sometimes they are stretching and compacting. It's very irregular depending on the conditions. But it's definitely always within a certain angle, in a certain line. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I hope you get it.
Yeah. What we're seeing, obviously, I'm going back to this image now, but this is essentially what we're trying to say with the wind turbines, for instance, is that how come the wind turbines that are further away seem to be cresting the waves, the blades as they turn, how come they seem to be dropping into the ocean? Well, if you apply the same logic as what's happening with the boat, for instance, so if the boat was further away, clearly it's not going to, if it was not optical, it would just all shrink proportionately. The fact that part of the boat is in a zone, like Nathan has said, that's very narrow, it has the effect of compressing it, making it smaller. In effect, bringing the top of the boat nearer to the waterline. So this is evident in the couple of these images here, and also the other one. Where are we?
But the water that is obstructing it is also being part of the distortion.
So here we have this being compressed too, but the width of the boat is still, the length of the boat is still the same. The top part of this boat is still the same as the top part of this boat. So that's out of the compression zone. The majority of the boat, which is further away, 9.2 miles away, that has now pushed the majority of the boat into the compression zone. Now you can see the height of the boat, this, from top to bottom, is far shorter than its real size, but the width is still the same. The width is still the same. So it is being compressed down. So if you imagine that on the top of this was the blades of the wind turbine as they're turning around, the stem itself is being compressed. The stem that the turbine is actually sat on up to the hub, that is being compressed down, and that is what gives the effect of making the turbines appear to be cresting the waves. It certainly isn't going over a curve.
And again, just to point out that if we gave these two pictures to the people like Red's Rhetoric, Sean Hufford, they would blink test the two boats over each other, and they would denounce that that was curvature that we're seeing. But unfortunately, the letters prove that it's not curvature we're seeing, and some other explanation needs to be present.
And lastly, I'm just going to play this video from today. It was quite fun to do. Here we are at, as you can see the boat, what I'm trying to focus on there. There's the chimney stacks. I am actually at 2 feet here. Distance was 22 miles.
You move your mouse.
Hopefully I'll zoom in a moment.
You move your mouse off
Sorry?
the screen. You just move your mouse.
Sorry, my mistake. Just waiting to focus because the tide was moving in at about probably 3 or 4 feet every minute today. So I was having to do a bit of a dance to avoid getting wet, although that didn't actually work because I did get quite wet. There you go. I'm just showing you that I'm crouched down. I'm with my tripod set at 2 feet. I will zoom in again, and I will capture the buildings that we're looking at. Ron Burgundy, the buildings of Barrow, not the lighthouse. So I'm just focusing through because I do lose focus quite a lot with being so low down. But I'll pause it there. You can actually see, can you see the buildings? A sliver of buildings along, and here we have the chimneys. If I can just hopefully get them out. There we go. I wanted to play the video because it was better than just showing you an image, because I could show you where I was. But this is what we're facing. There's the chimney, and there is the buildings.
Yep. The air clarity is a little bit less though, so it's more blurry.
It's because
I
the
mean,
sea.
don't get
You
me
can
wrong.
still see you can still see something.
But you
This
can see
should
the
be
sea
hidden.
moving.
This
You
should
can
be
see how
hidden.
rough it is by comparison to the yesterday or the day before, where it was like a mill pond. I mean, you got waves coming in. I mean, there may be only half a foot, but by comparison to what it was like a couple of days ago, wouldn't you agree, Ranty? It's not rough, but it's far rougher.
And then when I stand up and I'm at an elevation of about 4 feet, you can see it much clearer. Now, they haven't been miraculously brought back to the curve calcs. If you believe in the curve calcs, should say that none of these buildings, including the chimney, should not be seen from here. So nothing is there. This is all being loomed up, right? If you believe in Mick West and his magic ball. So all this is being loomed, apparently. Or you can just say that this is what we see because it is there. We see it because it is there.
Yep.
So there we
and
go.
obstructed by the waves, by the way. So
that was today's video. And if you want to see where I was, that's do I play it at the start or the end? So there we go. Well, there's the Ferris wheel. You can see I'm clearly at the back side of the Ferris wheel on the other side of the family bar at Central Pier in Blackpool. Distance 22 miles. 22 miles from Burgundy to the Devonshire Dock Hall, not 13.5.
Apparently, there's somebody in chat claiming that he's got evidence of curvature.
Really?
His name is... Oh, I've lost it. Don't know. He was citing... Mark Allain. Basically, he's claiming that Wolfie has got undeniable proof of curvature. I'd like to challenge Mark Allain to come on and present it, and let's see it.
Nah, I'd want Wolfie to come and bring that on. I'm not interested in some jack-off that thinks he can use someone else's evidence. So, Wolfie, feel free to join. Red's Rhetoric, feel free to join. Present your evidence.
And that will do for what we've been working on today, I believe. Well, actually, it's been for the past, culmination of the past 2 months' work, really. So,
Ranty, if you were to go back and go further down the coast, would you be able to? Do you think you'd be able to get much more distance out of it?
I honestly don't think there's a place I can go, because I've gone as far as I can round the curve. After that, it's St Anne's, and you haven't got a direct line of sight to it.
Do you mean round the corner, not round the curve?
Round the corner, yeah.
Yeah, round the curve of the geography. We're not going to exclude actual terms. He is going round the curve of the land, but just not round the curve of the presupposed heliocentric sphere Earth.
I find it interesting that the Metabunk curve calculator ultimately proves that we live on a
Yo, hey, I'm here.
stationary, non-moving, non-curving plane. Oh, I guess that's about that then.
So, yeah, going back to your observation of Isle of Man, this kind of explains a lot, doesn't it? Because the things that you were the mountains you were trying to focus on, which weren't really mountains, but they were hills, they were approximately, 240 feet in height, weren't they? To the northern edge of the Isle of Man. Whereas these buildings that we're looking at are about 167 feet. But yours was a greater distance. I think it was 30 miles?
34, yeah.
So this is 24. So comparably, there's probably a comparison there between the squashiness seen from 24.5 miles away, looking for 167 feet, as opposed to looking at 30 miles and looking for 230 feet, 240 feet. It's probably very consistent. And that's why you've got the squash on the horizon.
Mark Allain is asking, Ranty, can you do some observations with the tide all the way in and see how much you see then? Well, Ranty, go back to that 5-layer thing and show the 5 layers.
Do what, sorry? What?
You know the 5 layers, the 5 where you got the same, I don't know what you call it. It's the same picture, but 5 times stacked on top of each other.
Right, okay, yeah. It's 6 images, I think. 5 are observations, and the top one's just 4.
So do you want to point out the ones that were done at high tide?
Oh, right. So 18.3 miles was at high tide. 20.4 miles was at high tide. I'm trying to think way back to that. So bottom one would have been low tide.
Doesn't matter. The point is,
miles low tide.
It doesn't matter. The point is that you've done them at high tide, and I'd like to know what would be the reason for why the tide being all the way in. Are you suggesting that the circumference of the Earth would change that much that it would make so much of a difference, Mark Elaine? I'd like to know your science behind that assertion.
Well, it would make a lot of difference obscuring wise, because the slant where the compacted zone starts, there the waves will obstruct whatever is behind it, and if the tide comes in higher, then they will obstruct a lot more.
So you want to talk about a rising and falling tide, and not about the curvature of the Earth, the curve that you heliocentrics believe in.
Do you mind if sorry, do you mind if I just plug a channel? Is that,
sure.
Anybody object?
Depends on what channel it is.
Well, it's an absolutely superb flat earther that makes really good flat earth observations and puts out like his analysis of those observations. The channel
plug away, my friend. Plug away.
Cool. Well, like I say, the person's going out almost daily, taking observations.
Taboo conspiracy.
The channel is called Ranty Flat Earth. So if you're not subscribed and you're watching, you should be subscribed to Ranty Flat Earth. I will put a link. I'll make it the first comment on the video when it's uploaded. So subscribe to Ranty Flat Earth. He does so much work, and he's like undersubscribed in my humble opinion. So get your ass over there, click that link, and subscribe to Ranty immediately.
I'm subscribed.
The channel name, just one more time. So the channel name is Ranty Flat Earth. That's Ranty's channel. If you just type in Ranty into YouTube search, it should bring him up. But yeah, Ranty Flat Earth is the channel.
Taboo conspiracy would be the next one that you need to consider as well, guys, because his work's fab as well.
Wrong. You only need to subscribe to Ranty Flat Earth for all your flat Earth needs, Anthony.
And me.
Taboo conspiracy is ace.
Thanks for this. Thanks for the plug. Thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. A lot of hard work goes into this, though, to be fair. So
yeah, kudos. That was a really job well done. That was ace.
Any subs I get, thank you very much.
Cool.
So, Anthony, perhaps you could bring up the squashed Isle of Man from 1 foot, and perhaps we could have a compare to see whether or not that matches up.
Yeah. So I'm just looking for my pictures. Videos. This one. So it starts at the beginning, and then we have right. So are we on?
Yep.
Right. So we have this Snaefell. We have North Barrow, and look how much voluptuousness there is, how much girth there is to the land that we see. Comes down, there's lovely flowing contours,
Here we go.
Rolling hills, and then they roll off into the water, and then it seems to stop there. Well, when I went back to do the observation, because people like Slice Barkane, etc., said, "Yeah, Riley, go back and get it from the beach." Well, when I went back to the beach and got it, the first time I went to do this, I got to halfway through North Barrow and where the land drops off, and I looked at the land and I didn't recognize it initially because it's flat. Now it's been compressed. Now I didn't get why it was compressed at the time, but obviously the point is because, in my opinion, it appears to be the case that it's the direct consequence of the angle that we're looking at. But I looked at the land and I didn't recognize where I was, which is why I had to go back left. So I found that this mountain was North Barrow. I recognized that. And then I came down and I found this half moon thing, which if I go back to the composite is that half moon that's there. There's North Barrow. There's the half moon thing, which is currently on screen there. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, that's really squashed. Now, Slice Barkane has told everybody on all of his subs on his channel that this is the water level rising. But what Slice Barkane didn't show is that when you follow the water level right off to where it drops into the water, which was there, slide didn't show that. So if he did show that, he would show that we're seeing the same. Basically, the fact that this exists here is an issue because this water, his argument is that the water level's all the way up here, and we're only seeing this little tippy top going into it, which is nonsense because when I went over to the right of the image, which is what I'm going to do now, we have the drop bit where it goes in, and then which is here, and then we have a gap, and then I'm looking for this emerging land, which is only 300 feet tall. And what this does is, this is 300 feet tall. It pinpoints this down to here because it can't be anywhere else. So Sly's little sneaky argument that it's up here somewhere and the horizon's risen, he's lying to his subs. He's telling them porky pies because if this land appears when I go over the gap, then it pinpoints that land down to here at 300 feet. It's black and white. It's that simple. Sly can't pretend that he can't even see this. So we go across the water, the gap that I knew was there. And then when we get to the other side, you'll see that I stop, I zoom in, and then I realize that I'm looking at the land. And there it is. So now we zoom in with the zoom, and then I can see the land again. Now this land is supposed to be 700 feet behind the curvature of the earth. There's a wall of water, however big it is, in front of us that's about 2 miles away, and we can see the land. And I realized that I'm seeing stuff on the beach, on my belly, looking at the horizon, and it should not be there. Now it's squashed. You can see that the voluptuousness of that which is on screen, it is not the same anymore. It's very flat. But the point is we see it. So for whatever reason, it's being squashed and it's flat. So I've gone back over now to the other side of the island just to see the corner point. I think I might go back over left a little bit, or maybe not. So I go back over to the right to see whether I'm able to identify the land again. And sure enough, what do you know? There it is. But look how squashed it is and flat. Now that land is 300 feet tall. The tippy tops of it are 315 feet if you find the absolute tops of it. But on average, it's between 250 and 300 feet all the way along there. Now, this evidence is a problem because it pinpoints the other side of the land, meaning that we're seeing all of it. Now, Sly told his people that the horizon had risen up, but Sly didn't tell his people that the land on the right-hand side locks it to this, and it means that Sly must be wrong. But Sly's not wrong. He's not stupid. He's an intelligent guy. He knows that we live on a plane, or he at least realizes that we don't live on a sphere. But Sly can't tell his subs the truth. Now, whatever went on this day, that's how I caught the picture. I was laying on the floor with my camera on the beach. Now, whatever height above water you want to give that, who knows? Who cares? Point is, I caught it from the beach, and that was the challenge. And Sly's not even man enough to accept that I achieved what he asked me to do. He can't credit me for it. And he don't credit me for it, of course, because the land is seen. But back to the point in question, it's squashed. And I don't know why it's squashed, but for me, it's the effects of conversion at the horizon. As things go down to a point, they do get squashed because you're looking at the same amount of land, but it's squashed into a very small amount because of your viewing angle. That appears to me what is going on, and that's only possible if we live on a flat plane. It doesn't work on a sphere. So that in itself is a flat Earth proof. The fact that it seems to be getting squashed, in my opinion. Now, it may be optical, but I think it's the effect of changing your angle of observation, getting right down and making it, well, it effectively makes it squashed. But that's just my views. I may be wrong. But
no. Essentially, this is a new avenue for us to all look down. And what we're seeing is that this is what I've found isn't the first time that this has been evidenced. You know, you've caught it from seeing the Isle of Man. It's just we've never put it together before now. Perhaps apply it. I mean, even if we go to the Alkay video, it's the same with that. We can see clearly identifiable points of the Elsa Craig, and we see squashed at the bottom. We've talked about this before. We've shown it. And what we're starting to understand is the reality of our world cannot be mapped or modeled in 3ds Max or on a piece of paper. It just is impossible. So all you mathematicians, these rumpus type people that can come in and show us a diagram, that isn't the real world. What we do is real world photography, real world observations, and we analyze them and strive for answers. And we are getting the answers, and you are too cowardly to even come in and challenge us on this.
About 5 minutes left, and then we'll have a maybe 10-15 minute break before the next show.
So the link's not been public today, has it, or has it?
No, it's been public the whole time. I assume Jose joined via the public link. Did you join via the public link, Jose? He's not there. He's getting a burger.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Yeah,
through
thought
the
so.
public link.
It's been public the whole time.
Waz has just put in chat. Sleeping Warrior, I do remember Rumpus saying something about compression on the horizon. That's true. He made prediction. He was asked to make predictions about the weather because what would the conditions that would be necessary, and they are a narrow window of conditions. He has to have a very hot temperature above the cold temperature of the sea, and it must be a very extreme example. And we asked him to make the predictions for what would the weather be like on the day to get that floaty land. And he never ever got back to us, really. He did make 2 alternative predictions, and one of them was that the land would be compressed. But what's the explanation for it on a sphere? So he did predict that, but I think what he's predicted is the effects of living on a plane, because I don't understand. And it might be me being stupid. I'm not going to claim that I'm fantastic because there is no science on a flat Earth. But how can it be explained on a sphere? Now, he made that claim, you're right, but what is the explanation for the claim? Because when he made that claim, I thought, that's interesting. Why did he make that claim? Because that's not a spherical claim. That's a flat Earth claim. So, yeah, I agree. He did make that claim, but if Rumpus is out there paying attention, perhaps you could explain why it's compressed.
So if I can just interrupt you for a second, hopefully Jose's, I think he's trying to demonstrate something to us. So do you need me to hand the mic over to you and pop you up on screen?
Yeah, if you can. I just did this little something in paper right now. Oops.
Go ahead.
Oh, you see my camera? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just did this little piece of paper. Is represent a boat, and this is just the horizon. Let's say this is eye level right here. So I'm higher. I mean, you can see the squares. It's not gonna be like reality, but I mean, just playing along. The lower you go, you see the squares and the lines kind of disappear. The boat getting squashed in the bottom. So I just gonna play a little bit, do a very nice big drawing with squares, and play along with it.
Greetings.
Awesome.
No globe.
No
My
globe.
peoples.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
I
Mal.
can
Cool.
I
I
can
think with
fully
that, I'll
explain
probably
all
say-
of Ranty's observations.
I think I'll probably say with that, first and foremost, huge, massive, let's put my camera back into its right position. There we go. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully for sharing this debate. And also a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. But if you like the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you have not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!